I just feel like there is definitely a better, more organic way to get that information to the reader. He has very strong protective vibes, which I absolutely loved. He is completely smitten with Anna Maria. Like, things about this just don't make sense, right? I think a lot of times YA fantasy romance is better than adult fantasy romance, but I want adult characters, adult experiences, adult situations. It was a very interesting, very compelling book. I found myself like thinking about it, couldn't wait to keep reading.
Creepers left to rise, buzz like crazy. Everybody's trying to steal my lady. Spiders in the mirror and feel this can't be right. Back to the scene of a Friday night, to a blessed collision, still frozen tight. Spill drinkers, Cupid and the sound of her first chime. And why did you argue? We're dreaming of those eyes, the best part of my life. And when we make love, babe, don't make a sound, the clock won't turn around. Ooh, you turn around, 2,000 little fires, and ooh, your circle is spreading.
Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Today we're going to be starting a new weekly reading vlog. I haven't done one of these for a while. I have actually been, well, last week I did a reading vlog for my patrons. We did a summer readathon for the whole week, and so I was vlogging that for them, which was really, really fun, and it got me back into the mood for vlogging. So I thought, since this is pretty much the last week in June, that I would start this vlog and see if I can get through some of the books that are on my June TBR, and if I want to, because I just pretty much only want to read historical romances right now, and I think that I have pretty much read through, well, that's not true. I have 2 historical romances on my June TBR, but I'm just not sure if I'm in the mood for them, you know? I'm very much going by what am I in the mood for, and I feel like a lot of the times when I make my TBR video, by the time the end of the month comes along, I just don't really feel like reading any of those anymore. So anyways, that's what we're gonna do. So the books that I have my eyes on, I haven't started any of these yet, is Scarlight. This is a fantasy romance. I'm excited about that one. Anna Maria and the Fox, which I've actually already started. This is a historical romance. I have only read one book by this author, but I really loved it, and I really want to get more into her work. And then the other one is a Nicole Van. I think it's called Intertwined. So those are the 3 that I'm probably going to be picking from for this vlog. There are other books on my TBR. There's a contemporary romance. There are a couple of adult fantasies, which I just wasn't really in the mood for. I'm really not in the mood for contemporary romance right now, so we're gonna stick to, I'm probably gonna start, I think I'm gonna try and get back into Anna Maria and the Fox, because I wasn't not enjoying it. I just sort of feel like, I think I started it and then I put it on hold so I could read books for the book club I do with Jen, the Reiki Appreciation Society, and then I got right into the book for my Patreon book club, which was Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. And then I did my weekly readathon for patrons, so I feel like I don't really know what I'm in the mood for, but I'm gonna start that one. I'm gonna start Anna Maria and the Fox and see how I feel about that. But I also just went to the library today. I had to go get, I had a doctor appointment in a different city, and it's right next to a library that I have a library card that I use on Libby a lot. And it had like expired, and so I had to go in person and verify this is who I still am and whatever. Anyway, I went and did that, so now I can use my Libby card for 2 more years, my library card for 2 more years. And while I was there, I went and looked at the books, of course. I love libraries, and I haven't read a library book, a physical library book, in a long time. I always check them out and then I don't get to them, and I don't know if I'm going to get to these, but I would really like to try. I get these for 3 weeks. I think that's how long my library lets you check books out. 3 weeks. Yeah, that's about 3 weeks. So let me show you what I got. So I got Bride by Mistake by Anne Gracie. I love Anne Gracie. I just recently read The Perfect Rake. Loved it so much. I've read a few others of hers. I really, really like her. This was the only book of hers they had. It's a brand new historical romance, a Berkeley sensation, which I just love, and I hope. I feel like I've heard, you probably saw, if you're anywhere on Bookish Socials, an article that came out, I think by Book Riot, talking about the decline of historical romance. So in that article it said, this is, at the end of this year, mass market paperbacks will no longer be made, which I think is just so freaking sad because I love them. So when I saw this, I had to grab it. I know this is book 5 in the series, so that may be a mistake, but probably not. I feel like most of the times you can read out of order and be okay. And then I grabbed this book by Guy Gavriel Kay, which is a fantasy book, which I've heard so many great things about. I was so surprised to see this there. This looks like it's brand new. Like, man, my library had really excellent copies. This is The Lions of Al Rassan. I don't really know a lot about this, but I heard about this book from someone called Page Melt on TikTok. And I'm actually a patron of theirs as well. They do monthly video essays, and I love that. But I heard them talking about this book, and I love the way that they discuss and talk about books, which is why I joined their Patreon, because I can't get enough of their content. So I am very excited about this one, and I would love to. All of these, I only picked 3, which is still probably ambitious, but I was restrained. I got 3 books. I'm very excited about each one of them. Super excited, hyped to try this one. It says, the ruling Asherites of Alberson have come from the desert sands, but over centuries, seduced by the sensuous pleasures of their new land, their stern piety has eroded. The Asherite Empire has splintered into decadent city-states, led by warring petty kings. King Al-Malik of Kartada is on the ascendancy, aided always by his friend and advisor, the notorious Amar ibn Kaharan, poet, diplomat, soldier, until a summer afternoon of savage brutality changes their relationship forever. And then it goes on. Like, this is a pretty extensive blurb. It does say, hauntingly evocative of medieval Spain, The Lions of Al Rassan is both a brilliant adventure and a deeply compelling story of love, divided loyalties, and what happens to men and women when hardening beliefs begin to remake or destroy a world. This feels like it could also be very timely with current happenings in the world. Just reading that blurb has me super excited to pick that up. So I may try and read this tonight. Very excited about that. So then the last book that I got, they didn't have a ton of romance, and they didn't have a romance section. You had to just kind of wander the shelves. And the whole reason I went into that library, what I wanted to do was just do what I did before I had a Bookstagram, or before like the book internet existed, which was just go into the library and just pick books that sounded good. Now, to be fair, all of these are heavily influenced by the bookish internet, like this one specifically, but also Anne Gracie. I don't think I would have picked her up if it hadn't been for the bookternet. And also this one. This actually is a book that I had seen at Barnes & Noble several times. This is Catherine Addison's The Angel of the Crows. So she is actually the author of The Goblin Emperor, which is one of my favorite fantasy books. It's so, so good. This is a standalone novel, and I believe this has something to do with vampires. This is an alternate world fantasy. Angels inhabit every public building. Vampires and werewolves walk the streets with human beings in a well-regulated truce. A fantastic utopia except for a few things. Angels can fall, and that fall is like a nuclear bomb in both the physical and metaphysical worlds. And human beings remain human, with all their kindness and greed and passions and murderous intent. Jack the Ripper stalks the streets of this London too, but this London has an angel, the Angel of the Crows. This sounds so good too! Honestly, I didn't even read you what this one was about. These 2 fantasy books sound amazing. Now, Bride by Mistake, I did read the blurb on this. It says, 8 years ago, Lieutenant Luke Ripton made a hasty wartime marriage in name only to protect a young girl from a forced union, and left her protected in a remote mountain convent. Now Luke is Lord Ripton, but he has been unable to obtain an annulment, which leaves him no choice but to collect a wife he doesn't want. For nearly a decade, Isabella has waited like a princess, locked in a tower, dreaming of her handsome, dark-eyed prince. Her dreams are shattered when Luke reveals himself not as a prince, but as an autocratic soldier, expecting her unquestioning obedience, which is something Isabella's fiercely independent nature will not tolerate. And while Luke and Isabella's fiery personalities clash at every turn, they remain bound to their vows, never expecting that the passionate fury they share could become passion of a different kind. That sounds great, right? So you know what? What if I just read one of these? What if I try to read at least 2 of these in this vlog? Maybe we'll just say shoo shoo June TBR. We're gonna just mood read, because honestly, every single one of these sounds fantastic, and I haven't read a good adult fantasy in a while. Even though I literally just told you I don't really feel like I'm in the mood for adult fantasy. I don't know which book I'll pick, but this is welcoming you to the vlog, a little library haul, a little chit chat. When I read something that I want to talk about, I'll come back and talk to you about it. Thanks so much for being here. I will see you soon. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. We're at the same spot. We're at the kitchen counter. And oh my gosh, I'm doing a nude lip today, which I used to do all the time and I don't do anymore because I feel like it just washes me out. I definitely prefer a rosy pink red lip. Anyway, I just wanted to come and talk to you about the book that I started reading. I did decide to go with María and the Fox. I actually looked up the audios for the books I got from the library, and the Guy Gavriel Kay, I feel like, let me grab him, hold on. So this one is one that I'm super interested in. I listened to the sample of the audiobook, and I feel like the writing is a little too dense for me to just dive into the audiobook itself. I want to read it physically first, and then transition to the audio maybe. And I know, like, the whole point of getting library books is to read them physically, but I just don't feel like I will have time. Anyway, I do want to start reading this physically. I did use a credit on an audiobook for this because I'm super interested in this, and I also think my husband might like it. And then the Anne Gracie, I just, there is no audiobook. So I'm going to try and read that one physically. Anyway, but I needed an audiobook to go with, and I wanted to make headway on my TBR, so I picked María and the Fox. I did pick that back up right where I left off. I left off at like 8%, and now I think I'm at about halfway, so I listened to it most of the day yesterday. And I am really liking it. Like, I do really love this author's writing style. I think she has a very fresh, compelling voice in historical romance. I really like how she builds her characters. I think that's something she does super, super well, is she makes them very well-rounded and very fully fleshed out. She makes them feel like individual people and not just a cardboard cutout of what you expect in a historical romance. I really do like the diversity of this, because this is basically about some Mexican sisters who are coming to England to try and escape the French occupation of Mexico at the time. And so a lot of this book deals with the politics surrounding that and the injustices of what is happening to the people in Mexico. And we're also dealing with some racism of that in England as well. Like, there is a very, very memorable, painful scene where one of the ladies in England is suggesting that one of the sisters uses white cream on her face to try and reduce how dark her skin is, and it's beautiful and empowering to see how the sisters react to that. But it also is just a moment that made me, like, specifically aware of how difficult a time that must have been for people who are not white, living in a place that is predominantly white and with the members of nobility and things like that, even though these Mexican sisters are essentially like princesses, you know. There is some difficulty with the main heroine in here and her father, so you do get a lot of internal thoughts about her father and escaping him, and it's kind of like something that haunts her thoughts throughout the whole thing. I will say that I am not seeing a ton of romantic development. I think most of what we've seen so far, so I am 47% of the way through, most of what we've seen so far is a lot of buildup of the story and the world, and showing us how the sisters ended up in this situation and why they are here and the impacts of what's happening on their lives because they are here. We do get to see a close-knit sister group, which I really like, and we have seen the hero, Gabriel. He is a force in this. He's a politician, essentially. And I do really like him, and I like how drawn he is to the heroine. And there are some small romantic moments that are really beautifully, like, drawn out in a slow burn type of way. But there's not a ton of romantic development. A lot of this is set up, showing us the political landscape, showing us what's, you know, the gravity of what's happened to them as they've left Mexico. So I think that could slow this down for a lot of readers, and it could add a lot of interest to a lot of other readers. You know, I will say that a lot of what I feel like is happening as we're getting shown the political landscape is what I would call info dumping if it were a fantasy book. A lot of this telling us what's happening is told in dialogue from the characters, so it definitely feels... I think this does, or it can have the tendency to feel preachy, but it also feels necessary to the story. I just feel like there is definitely a better, more organic way to get that information to the reader. So I'm liking it. I'm not sure what my final star rating on this will be at all, but I am liking it, and I'm happy that I continued reading it because I want to get this off my TBR. Like, that's a major goal I have right now. Is to get some of these books that have been languishing on my TBR read or DNF'd and moved on, you know? So I'm happy that I'm reading this because I've heard really good things about this series, and I definitely want to see what I think about them and support the author. So those are my feelings so far. I will come back when I have other things to say. Oh, I also, well, actually I'm not even going to talk about that right now because I don't have time, but I will talk about the book I'm reading on my Kindle next. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the vlog. Okay, so I did finish Anna Maria and the Fox, and I think that I have decided... This is a tough one. I feel like this is a 3-star read for me. There's a lot to like about this book. There really is. One of the biggest things that I liked about this is the in-depth historical details. I think that we do get... it's very clear this is very well researched about the French occupation of Mexico and how that impacted the people there. And I loved seeing the sister group in here. I really liked the hero. I think that he was a great hero. I loved that he was an abolitionist, but I really loved, like, he has very strong protective vibes, which I absolutely loved. He is completely smitten with Anna Maria. I liked the marriage of convenience in here. Also, a major thing I like about this is this author's prose. Her writing is so good. Her prose is really beautiful and really lovely. Like, you can tell that this book is a pure labor of love for this author. And I love having this type of a book with this type of representation and diversity in historical romance because it is a bit of a rarity. And I am sad that she is, I think that she will probably continue to write historical romance. I'm not for sure, but I do know that she has a contemporary romance coming out after, I think, the 3rd or 4th in this series, and the last book in the series comes out this summer. And I think that's a shame because she's a really strong, beautiful historical romance author. So after all those positives, you're probably wondering, why did you give it 3 stars? So mostly, I really kind of wavered between 3 stars and 4 stars, but I just feel like my own personal enjoyment of the overall story wasn't strong enough for it to be a 4-star. This definitely has a lot of historical details, but there's not enough in the story, or specifically the romance, driving the book forward. The marriage of convenience doesn't happen until near 70% of the way into the book, and once that happens, we see our romance progress very quickly, and I really loved that. I loved the romance. Like, this author, she's so good at writing romance and tension and great romantic moments. Like, she gets chemistry right. I really, really love that about her. But the first 70% of this book is so much setup and world building and building for future books to come, I'm sure, that it really felt like it was kind of dragging the whole story down. And I kept wondering, like, okay, so I see little tiny bits and pieces of the romance, but I don't see them interacting a lot. So the romance really takes a long time to come up and be the center stage. And what we get is beautiful, but because it's so late to the party, and again, like, I understand why she needed to set so much of the stage up for future books. Like, this is a very ambitious endeavor in this book to create this type of a world in historical romance, and I kind of feel sad to give it a 3-star because I think it is, if it had been, I think, again, like, I'm going to compare this to a romantasy because that's where I see the closest comparison here, where it has, sometimes romantasy will have way too much setup for future books to come. But you do kind of expect that with a romantasy. I think the expectation to go into a romantasy and think our couple might not be together until the end of book 4, like, that's totally fine. But because this is like a series of standalones and she's setting up the overall arc for the other sisters, it can be a little bit harder to get me to feel really invested in the characters early on. But the thing that makes me compare it to a romantasy is very common for romantasy to just straight info dump, like a ton of info dump about the world and how it works and how it functions and history lessons, and I'm very critical of that. And so I do feel like that was similarly happening here, where we had a lot of info dumping about what's happening to the people in Mexico, the French occupation, how the sisters ended up here, and a lot of very moral posturing of, well, this is bad and this is why. And in that way, this feels like it's a bit preachy, you know, and I, for one, have been very loud on this channel in all of my reviews about I don't want the themes and messages to be so clear that it's hitting me over the head. I want to be able to put it together, and it can be done. And I don't feel like this needed to be quite as heavy-handed as it did, in my opinion. But again, I also, like, want to be very sensitive and understanding that I can see why she did that. This is something that's very near and dear to her heart. But it feels relentlessly hitting you over the head with information that feels didactic and preachy, and that is a huge pet peeve of mine. So ultimately, that info dumping of the world, the lack of romance in the first 70%, that's really why I ended up giving this a 3-star, but I for sure want to read more in the series. I really love this author, and I think that what she did right in here, she did really right. So I'm going to carry on to another book, not in this vlog, at a future point. So now that brings me to what in the heck am I going to read next, right? So I have so far read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've read 6 books on my TBR, which is pretty good. Now there are some books on here that I feel like if I don't get to right now, I may just never get to, right? And one of those is Scarlight. This is a romantasy. This is what I was talking about in the first clip. I think I'm going to go ahead and start with that one. We'll see how it goes. I was actually kind of looking, it is actually Thursday when I'm filming this clip, so I was trying to see, like, which one of these is shortest, to see if that would, because I want to be able to finish filming this and have this vlog up for you guys, probably Tuesday. Tuesday would be pretty good if I can do that. Okay, let's see. So, Scarlight is a romantasy. It's the first book in a series. This says, as a child, Princess Bryn was saved from a wolf attack by a prince from a rival kingdom that left them both scarred. Rhaegar's people believe that a life saved is a soul owned, and 10 years later, Rhaegar returns to claim his prize, Bryn. And then other things happen. But that enough right there is enough to hook me. So yeah, I kind of have not really been in the mood for romantasy pretty much at all. But I'm going to go ahead and try this and see. If it's not keeping my attention, I am going to DNF it and move on to something else, and I'm not sure what that will be. But I'm going to give it a try. I haven't read it or listened to it at all. This is going to be first time into it, so we'll see how it goes. And then I'll come back and update you on maybe my first thoughts, or if I DNF it, if I pick something else. So I'll see you guys soon.
Staring out the window on a cloudy morning, trying to lick her wounds while the tea is swarming. Sometimes it's like a bird that's never shipped out. Sometimes you go around and I never run the rail. This week has been a mess, but I'm gonna tell you, we're a bit at work, gonna make it brand new. We're gonna put away for a comeback. We all need some time, and I promise you that. Promise you that. I promise you that. I know this can take a while. it's gonna be alright, girl. And if it won't be today, I'm the shoulder you can cry on. So cry if you wanna cry. Small rainbows will fill your eyes. You cry if you wanna cry. Now time will be on your side. Maybe with the drops lost in the ocean, drifters following the streams in motion. Riders of the night with no destination, don't never know the name of our future station. We are lost romantics in a world that's frozen. We gonna be the heroes of our own novel. We just need some time.
Hello my friends, welcome back to the vlog. Okay, so I actually have an update for you. I did finish Scarlight. It took me like a day and a half to read it, and honestly, I really didn't care for it. And I was tempted to DNF it, but as I am prone to do, I bought the audiobook, even though it was only like $7. It's still like I bought it, and I knew if I DNF'd it, I would never get back to it. And I think that combined with how I've done a pretty good job of getting through books that have been on my backlist for a while. Like, I was just like, I'm just gonna see it through. I'm just gonna finish it. And truthfully, it wasn't like so bad that I couldn't handle it, but it was bad enough. I mean, it was bad enough. I gave it 2 stars. This fantasy romance, I just don't even know. I feel like this was just such a hot mess. This was a hot mess. I do really like the concept that the hero and heroine are from rival kingdoms. When they're children, he saves her from a wolf attack, and then that means that they're like soulbound. They meet like 10 years later. I think she ends up kidnapped. I don't even remember what in the world. This plot was in places non-existent, nonsensical, and in other, like, I did not feel like this had a cohesive plot that was keeping me reading. Most of what kept me reading was the curiosity of, am I gonna like it? Like, is it gonna live up to some of the hype that I have heard? Not that I feel like this book is super hyped, but I have heard a few people that just really, really loved it. But I think I'm quickly realizing that I've taken a recommendation from this person before. I can't even remember their name. From TikTok. But we both really like The Wraith King by Juliet Cross. And so I feel like I've tried a few of her other romantasy recommendations and just no, like, not at all. So yeah, anyway, we also end up finding out that Bryn, the heroine, her parents were actually like tyrannical rulers, so they are killed, which means that she is, and then the rest of her family are killed, which means that then she is the one who kind of has to rule the kingdom. But she is like shocked that her parents were these tyrannical rulers, and I'm just sort of like, how did you not know? How did you not know? There is a big element to her just feeling very naive, very sheltered about everything in the world, in a way that makes this feel very young. I feel like because, not necessarily, because, you know, because I've been reading so many historical romances lately, it is pretty common, or often can be in historical romance, where the heroine is naive to ways of the world or whatever, but it still seems to feel a bit more adult. And I think that one of my big problems with this book is it feels super young, not necessarily because, like, there's sometimes I say that a book feels young, usually a romantasy, and it's because it feels like it has modern day slang that like teenagers would say, and I'm just sort of like, I really don't like this. That's not necessarily what I mean here. I mean, like, the writing of this is very, very, very rudimentary, and I would say that it is a bit poor as well. There's this habit the author has of switching tenses in this book, which I think is fundamentally, like, that should for sure be a habit that is fixed before you are published. And secondly, like, your beta readers and anybody, they should be catching that, right? Any editing should catch tense flipping like that. So that makes me feel like there wasn't a ton of thought given to the technical aspect of this book, but there also wasn't a ton of thought given to just the plotting aspects of this and the romance. Like, none of this felt well thought out. It feels very rudimentary. Like, any concept that's introduced in here about the world feels like it's just kind of thrown in there. It doesn't feel like there's any thought behind it, and it just reads very convenient at times. There are also lines in here that are meant to grab a romantasy type of reader, things that they would typically like, edging on the dramatic about how she feels about him and how he feels about her, and I just find that so tired. Not the idea of that, like, I love hearing how couples feel about one another, but I feel like the way that it's phrased is something that I've heard a million times before. So this concept, I think, is good. The execution was really not great. I also feel like there was a lot of emphasis on how pure the heroine was, and just the disparity between their kingdoms, how his world really wasn't like that at all. And there are rules about his world that just, like, don't make sense. Like, why are the animals supposed to be inside, but then a lamb was, like, missing and lived outside, and then they find the lamb and it's totally fine. Like, things about this just don't make sense, right? And also, I feel like the characters feel very shallow. That's another thing that makes this feel young, in the similar way that I would say, like, I've said this before and it sounds like a deep, deep insult, and I don't necessarily mean it to, but this is the feeling that a book like this gives me. It feels like a Babysitter's Club type of book, where it's hitting certain story beats that they know readers typically will like and want, but they're surface level, very shallow. They're just there to meet basic requirements for a story. There's nothing that goes beneath the surface. There's no real diving into the characters. There's no real diving into emotional... Oh, goodness, you're gonna cut out Tangled Up in my charging cord. Silly boy. There's nothing that really shows us who these characters are in a world that feels like it should be really high stakes, right? Because, like, her parents are killed, and there's conflict between the kingdoms, and she is supposed to marry one of these three brothers, so there's also, like, a lot of... Like, she is in love with Rangar, I think is how you say his name. Supposedly in love, like, and again, that's something, like, I'm like, oh, okay, you're in love, like, do we not get to see the falling in love? Like, we don't get to see the falling in love, we're just supposed to, okay, they're in love, right? And, it just moves too quickly. Things just are happening too quickly, and I just sort of feel like, I don't know that this is necessarily an age thing. I don't know that it's a maturity thing. I think that what it is a mature reader, someone who has spent a lot of time reading, is not going to be satisfied with this book, because everything about this is too surface level. It's recycled concepts, it's rudimentary writing, it's cheap plot tricks at the end to try and get you to pick up the next book. Like, this felt like so much of this was filler to stretch this out into a 3-book series that was just unnecessary, you know? So I am honestly... I'm disappointed with this, because I really wanted to love it. I feel like I've had some pretty good success recently with finding really great new historical romance authors, like Louisa Darling and Rose Lerner, new to me. And I have not had that success this year with fantasy romance at all. Zero. Like, I was actually thinking, like, have I even had a fantasy romance that I've read this year that has been 5 stars? Because I don't know that I have. Like, I'm gonna look that up really quick because I'm curious. I actually have Iron and Embers by Helen Schurer. I think I'm saying her name wrong. I really enjoyed that. I think that is a romantasy author that I really do like. I think she's good. But I also I haven't read a ton of romantasy this year. Like, I read a lot last year, but I don't know. It's books like this that make me feel like old. It makes me feel so old. And not even because the characters are young, but because this just feels like such a... This feels like an entry-level book that someone who is really wanting just certain specific things in a romantasy, they're going to find that here. And if maybe they haven't read deeply or widely, they're going to really enjoy it, right? But I just found it to be... I think the thing that keeps coming back to my mind is shallow, underdeveloped. Yeah, so I finished it. I'm not going to continue the series. I have no desire to pick anything else up by this author because I actually feel like I don't even think this is their first book. If it was a debut, you know, I would maybe be tempted to give them another try in the future, but this is... Oh, okay, this is the author who wrote White Horse Black Knights, which I think is super popular. I think a lot of people really like that. I think that's a Lady Godiva retelling. This author, I'm looking her profile up on Goodreads. She's got a ton of books out. So that's actually pretty disappointing. Because, like, I feel like, you know, that White Horse Black Knights, that's got like 13,000 ratings. I expect a better quality of writing for... I just do. So yeah, I didn't like this. I'm gonna just give it 2 stars because while I'm talking, like, it is shallow, it is rudimentary, but it wasn't, it's not the worst romantasy I've ever read. I've read others this year that I think are worse than this, but yeah, still pretty disappointing. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. I was gonna say, maybe if I read something else, I'll update you guys on that, but I don't know. I am actually reading a historical on my Kindle right now that I'm really liking. I just don't know if I'll get it finished by the time I want to have this vlog up. You know what, maybe I will see if I can get it finished this weekend. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get this book finished. It's Unmasking Miss Appleby by Emily Larkin. This is another new-to-me historical romance author. This one is an interesting one because it's historical romance, but it has a little bit of a fantasy element to it because it is kind of a Cinderella retelling. So it has a Cinderella retelling aspect to it, and I am about 25% of the way in, and I am really liking it. It's really keeping my interest. I really like the writing style. The writing is pretty excellent and phenomenal. The plot is interesting too because she, you know, it starts with basic Cinderella retelling. She's trying to get out of her evil stepmother's underneath her thumb, and she is kind of looking for a job when one night a fairy godmother appears to her, only it's like an evil fae. Like, she has like black eyes and pointed cat teeth, and the way that she's described is very much like, it gives such a strong, sinister feeling to like expressions that she has and subtle things that she says. Like, it's really, really well described to make you feel like this is a scary fairy godmother, and you can tell that because of how the heroine, I think her name is Charlotte, her name is Charlotte, because you can tell, like, when she's trying to decide what her wish will be, the fairy godmother is going to grant her one wish. She's like trying to be very careful to not make a bad choice to get herself trapped in something that's going to be dangerous or whatever. So she ends up settling on her wish to be a shapeshifter. And she decides to do that because, and she asks several questions because she wants to be able to shapeshift into a man to be able to get a job, to have her own money, to get freedom to leave her stepmother's house, which I thought was really clever. And I also think that it is a really interesting look at how a woman feels in this society and how drastically her life changes when she all of a sudden looks like a man, because she literally physically changes into a man. Like, her mind is still Charlotte, but her whole physical appearance, anatomy, and everything is that of a man. And it's really a little bit sad, but also really interesting to see how she walks through this world as a man now. And I don't know, I really am liking that. But the romance is between her boss. Her boss doesn't know at all that she's actually a woman. And I think it's interesting because it's not just like she's dressing like a boy, like she literally physically changes into a man. So I am, so far, 25% in. She is starting to have feelings for him because she's still Charlotte in her mind, but her body is, I think Christopher is what she calls him. So she's starting to have feelings for her boss, and he is completely oblivious, right? Because he thinks that this is a man, and he's a widower himself, and, you know, he's not interested in men. So I'm very curious to see what happens, how the romance develops, where the story goes, what the big blow-up is, because, I mean, I feel like he's for sure is going to have to find out that she shapeshifts into a man. I don't know. I'm interested in this, so I'm going to do my best to finish reading that this weekend, and then Monday I will come back and update you with my final thoughts on that one, and then close the vlog out, because I don't know. I think it's been a good reading week, but I haven't had a book that I really loved this week, so anyway, I'll see you when I finish Unmasking Miss Appleby, and I'll review that for you then. Well, hello my friends. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the vlog, the last clip in this vloggity vlog. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, plot twist is I actually did listen to another audiobook that I do want to talk about. I didn't even mention it. It was on my June TBR, and I was just, you know, when I finished the last audiobook, I wanted to just pick something up that I could just kind of listen to slowly throughout the weekend, and I wanted something specifically because I had a lot of shipping of orders I had to do on Friday, and so usually that means like a lot of just busy work, not a lot of mental work, and so it's a great time to like start a new audiobook. So I decided to go with A Cruel Thirst. This is a book that I've been wanting for a while. I absolutely adore the cover. I think it is so freaking stunning. It's such a beautiful cover. This was gifted to me by my dear friend Jessin. This is a YA fantasy romance, and this is an author who, her first book, Sinner's Isle, was also, I believe, like a forbidden YA fantasy romance, and it got a lot of buzz. And I never ended up picking that one up. I do want to, especially now. Anyway, this was on my June TBR. Honestly, I just picked it up to try and get through the last of the books that were on my TBR, because I was just feeling it. I was feeling like sticking to my list and reading it, and it felt great. So I read this one. I honestly listened to this in a day and a half. I just kind of couldn't stop listening to it. I absolutely loved it. Sir, do I have to chew your bone right here? I'm so sorry. He has a bone he's chewing, but I don't want to take it away from him, because then he will also be loud. So this is by Angela Montoya. And this is set in Mexico in a historical setting, and it is about vampires. I think this would make, if you like reading vampire books in the fall, I think this would make a perfect book for that. I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm going to put a picture in there so I don't have to keep holding this up anymore. But the basic premise of this book is we have our hero Lalo, who is... Vampires in this world, in this setting, are obviously, like, they're something that are dangerous. They take people away. Almost everybody in this world, in this community, has lost somebody they love to vampires. So Lalo ends up trying to take some vampires down, and in the process he ends up getting turned into a vampire himself. And then we have Carolina, who is our heroine, who comes from a family who is also, like, deeply affected by the vampires. And she is a vampire hunter. It's a long history in her family. And I honestly love a setup of a vampire hunter and a vampire falling in love. And this one was just so great. I felt like the world of this was beautifully fleshed out. It wasn't anything completely far out there, like, because it's vampires, we kind of know how vampires work, but it did have just enough of its own mythology in here that kept it interesting and fresh. I really liked the world building. I felt like it was conveyed to the reader in a very clear way to understand. It made a lot of sense. It didn't, like, drag out. There wasn't info dumping. Honestly, like, I felt like it was really, really well done and well delivered in here. The writing style, this is my first book by this author, the writing style was excellent. Like, a very strong writing style that has a really strong authorial voice that carries through into the whole narrative. I really enjoyed that. It is told in dual point of view, so we have points from our hero's point of view and points from our heroine. And I felt like they were both individually fully fleshed out characters. I really enjoyed them a lot. Again, the writing style was absolutely beautiful. Just very, very clear, very easy to understand, but also very beautiful at times, with some sparks of really brilliant moments of introspection about what vampires mean to humans in society and how that may impact young adults who are just on the cusp of adulthood, and the events in this book kind of push them over the edge to an adulthood, and I love that so much. I do feel like the plot in here was, you know, pretty strong. They're working to bring down these vampires, and they have a theory that there's this myth that if you destroy one of the vampire who sires you, that there's a way that you can get rid of vampires as a whole. So that is also like not something that's super new, but it was really well done in here, and I liked the added mythology of it here as well. I will say that the main reason that it's not a 5-star is that this did have a bit of insta-love in it, which is not uncommon in YA, and it wasn't overwhelmingly so, and it also wasn't insta-lust. Like, I feel like there is a very strong physical connection between the two of them where they find each other beautiful and desirable, but it keeps it very firmly in YA, and it doesn't feel like something that is gross for an adult reader to read. You know, like, that's something that I am very aware of. Like, I don't want to read about sexualized minors ever, period, the end. I just don't want to do it. And that wasn't done here at all. I felt like their romance, while it had an element of insta-love, that's not the main reason I gave this 4 stars. It also had a good build-up where I felt like you did get to see them fall in love. It did seem a little touch too easy, and I hesitate to say that that is something that marks it as YA, because it certainly can. But there are always outliers, and there are YA fantasy romances that don't do that. This one kind of did lean into a little bit of insta-love, but it was still like, you still got to see them fall in love, develop feelings for each other, work together throughout the course of the book, which I really, really enjoyed. I also really felt like the ending in here is the main reason why I gave this 4 and not 5. That, to me, was a little bit more disappointing than the insta-love, which doesn't bother me in YA. It wasn't heavy-handed. It was just something that I kind of noticed, and I think that has to do with a little bit of the pace of the book. Like, the book moves at a pretty quick clip, and again, that's another hallmark of YA. It's kind of intended to grab readers' attention, to keep them hooked, and to keep them reading, and I think it's very effective in here. So I feel like the balance of the initial feeling of insta-love was there, but we also got to see some really beautiful growth. This book doesn't feel immature at all either. Like, these are characters who are young, just on the cusp of adulthood, but they don't feel immature. They feel mature. They feel like they've had to carry a lot of burdens because of the plot and the world, and they don't feel young. Honestly, I've read so many adult fantasy romances, romanticises, where the characters feel so immature, when they should feel more mature because of the things that they've had to go through, because of the things they're currently going through, and that drives me crazy. So it was really refreshing to see a YA fantasy book where the characters don't feel immature. They do feel their age, only because they don't have a lot of knowledge and experience with the world, not in a way that is just annoyingly immature, you know? And I feel like this book was, it was interesting that I picked this one up. I didn't do it intentionally, but coming off of the heels of Scarlight, which the writing was terrible, the characters did feel very immature, the romance was insta-lust, the characters were not fully fleshed out, the plot didn't make sense, the world building was not good. Honestly, that thinking more about Scarlight, especially when I compare it to A Cruel Thirst, which I think is just really beautifully well done, I kind of want to give Scarlight 1 star. I think I'm going to change my rating to 1 star. It was so disappointing. It was really poorly done. I didn't enjoy pretty much anything about that, and I'm really tempted to bump A Cruel Thirst up to 5 star. There are just a few things that aren't quite there, but it's so good. It's so good. So I think I am going to err on the side of generosity with a book that I think is really standout and beautifully well done, and give it 5 stars. So 4.5, rounded up to 5 on Goodreads, A Cruel Thirst. One of the best fantasy romances I've read this year, and it's YA, which honestly is no surprise. I think a lot of times YA fantasy romance is better than adult fantasy romance, but I want adult characters, adult experiences, adult situations, but I want it to have the same quality that a lot of these YA fantasy romances have. So, it's frustrating. Anyway, the ending of A Cruel Thirst. The ending was just a little too quick. It was a little too easily resolved. It was a little too clean. Everything was kind of wrapped up in a bow. I was hoping for a little bit more of a bang with the ending, things to be a little more messy, things to really feel like our characters had to work to get their happily ever after at the end, you know, because there is a HEA in here. So yeah, 4.5 rounded up to 5. Not perfect, but really quite good. Like very, very good. I don't feel like I want to emphasize so strongly, this book does not feel immature. This does not feel young. This feels age appropriate, as in the characters are going through things that you would expect characters who are coming of age to go through, but they aren't annoyingly immature. They feel mature. They feel the gravity of what they're going through, of the choices they have to make, of the things that are happening in their life. All the while, they have this budding attraction and romance building between them, which was just beautiful. So, very impressed with this author. Really excited to get to Sinner's Isle now, and I can't wait to see what she writes next, because it was just fantastic. Loved the history of Mexico, loved the twist that that brought to the vampire mythology. I thought that it was just really, really well done. So, okay, and now the last book that I want to talk about is The Unmasking of Miss Appleby, which is the book I've been reading on my Kindle for a couple of weeks. I did finally finish that, and initially I will say I really, really felt like this could be a 5-star read for me. I really felt like it could be, because it has so many unique and interesting things in here. And again, the thing that carries so much weight for me is I really like this author's writing style. I think that she has a great use of prose. I think she does a great job of building tension. I think she does a really good job of propelling a story forward through the whole book that keeps you interested and keeps you invested. This does have a really strong plot that does kind of overshadow the romance at times. I would say it does overshadow the romance at times. All the times, basically, because we're in this world. She is having this gift from her fairy godmother. She's working as a man. The man that she's falling in love with, her boss, the Earl Cosgrove, like, he doesn't know that she's a woman, so she's falling in love with him. He thinks that he is just a man working for him, his secretary. So there does come a point where you kind of wonder, how is the romance even going to happen in here? Like, what is going on? How's this going to happen? And I think that I wasn't super thrilled with how the romance began. It does begin physically. There are solid reasons in the book for why it does, and I think it's interesting how it plays out, because they have a physical encounter where our heroine is seeking to, like, she desires him so much and she wants to, you know, sleep with him, like, have him be her first, and she's trying to figure out a way to do that because she's finding it uncomfortable as working as a man around him, and like blushing and having very obvious physical reactions to him because she's turned on by him, right? And so her solution to that, she thinks, is I'm gonna get some information that I need, because they're trying to figure out who is targeting Cosgrove. Somebody is targeting him. There's a mystery throughout the whole book that is basically like, someone is trying to hurt him. They are damaging his property, breaking windows. Somebody's trying to kill him. They're trying to figure out who it is. And so she shapeshifts into different animals to try and figure out, like, follow the scent of who came and broke the windows, to figure out who is targeting him, who is trying to kill him. So she gathers some information, and she has this plan that she's going to have her male form, I guess, basically say, hey, there's this lady who has information about you. She wants you to meet here, and then she's going to she's going to tell you this information about who might be targeting you. And that just seems a little far-fetched, right? Because her whole thing is, I'll tell you this information, but you have to sleep with me. And the fallout of what happens there is where the romance starts to happen. And that's interesting, right? Because then he has some complicated feelings for her, but also he doesn't realize that she is shape-shifting into his secretary as a man. So it's messy. It's messy and it's complicated, and you just can't help but wonder, like, how is this going to get solved? How is this going to get resolved? How is he going to fall in love with her when they're only having, like, these trysts where they're sleeping together? And that's complicated in itself because she was a virgin. Anyway, and he's got some baggage about intimacy, so it was very interesting. This was a very interesting, very compelling book. I found myself, like, thinking about it, couldn't wait to keep reading. I really enjoyed the author's writing style. I felt like it was very unique. I haven't read anything like this, but there were some elements that really just didn't work for me, and I think that they all surround the romance. Like, eventually he does find out that she has been shape-shifting into, you know, all these other animals to gather this information, but specifically his secretary, and the fallout of that is pretty brutal. It really is, as you would expect it to, right? But I don't know. So I enjoyed this. Again, it was very compelling. I definitely want to read more from this author. The romance itself was not what I was hoping for. but it was still a really compelling and a fun read. So that one is probably, this is one that I feel like is a true between 3 and 4 stars, because there are some really great things about this, and there are also some things that are not so great, right? And I think that when I just think about how was my enjoyment, I wasn't hindered by the writing. I thought the writing was excellent, like very strong writer, good prose, good characters, good setup, not great romance. I feel like that is very much an effect of the plot that she had in here. So I think I'm going to say 3.5, rounded up to 4 stars. This is very much, this is a book that I think has the potential to not work for a lot of historical romance readers. I think this has more potential to work for readers who like fantasy romance, because the fantasy element is pretty strong in this. She's shape-shifting throughout the whole thing, right? And the whole fairy godmother, who is this very evil fae, it has just a touch of fantasy to be unique and interesting, but it still feels very solidly historical romance. But again, the romance does not hit all my bells and whistles because of plot things, and I don't know. So that's one that I feel a little bit conflicted about, but my overall feelings of that are enjoyment. I had a fun time. I want to read more from this author again, for sure. So 3.5, rounded up to 4. That's 4 books I've talked to you guys about. Can you believe that? So Anna Maria and the Fox, solid 3 stars. Liked it, didn't love it. I felt like it had some story issues in there, and the romance took too long to develop for me. And then I read Scarlight, which I did not care for at all. That was kind of painful to read. I don't want to read anything more by that author. I'm not a fan, and that was disappointing. Initially gave it 2 stars, dropped it to 1 star. And then I read A Cruel Thirst, which is a YA fantasy romance. Very much enjoyed this. Beautifully written, solidly crafted, excellently well done. Very unique history, world, just fabulous, 5 stars. And then The Unmasking of Miss Appleby by Emily Larkin, which I feel the most conflicted about this one. I feel like I'm not quite sure if I could recommend this wholeheartedly. Like, I don't know if I could. But at the same time, I feel like it's worth checking out because it's very unique, it's very interesting, it's very compelling, it has a lot of good things about it. Is it a home run? Not for me, but it might be for you. So 4 stars for that one, 3.5 rounded up to 4. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed this weekly reading vlog. I had a lot of fun getting to vlog for you. Thank you so much for being here and for watching my videos, for connecting with me, for commenting. I'm just so grateful for the community that I have built with you, the people who view my channel, my stories. I think that the book community has changed and shifted so much since I first joined BookTube in 2020 that I kind of feel like I have not a lot of other content creators that I really am connecting with anymore, other than my dear Jen from the Book Refuge. So I find that I'm really relying on you guys, which is not that I'm relying on you, but I'm getting a lot out of our interaction. Anyway, that got weird. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. And if you have made it this far and you want to leave me an emoji, please leave me any flower. This has beautiful red flowers. Leave me any type of a flower. It's July tomorrow when you're seeing this, hopefully, if I can get it edited in time. And I'll see y'all in my next video.